Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we are talking about the methods used to establish authoritarian states, the role of leaders. We're doing these videos, this next series of videos, a little out of order than we did the Hitler ones because I want us to follow along chronologically with this. And in order to do that, we need to start with who is leading the charge, who is created and who is trying to establish communism in China. So for that, just a refresher, methods is an action committed either by a person or persons as a way to accomplish a goal, right? It's an action. It's the way something is achieved. The topic for today is the role of leaders, and it's who oversaw the different methods used by the CCP to come to power. Now for this, there are two examples that we're using for the role of leaders. The 28 Bolsheviks and the man of the hour, Mao Zedong. These two examples are going to provide and be very vital into the following videos. So please make sure to really pay attention to just how these groups interact with each other. Now, who are the 28 Bolsheviks? Well, the 28 Bolsheviks, here's a picture of some of them, are Chinese students who studied in and at the Moscow University in the Soviet Union. They were trained in one of the foremost socialist, communist, and Marxist, right? Because all of those are different, and Marxist schools in the world. They went over there to study and to learn, and while there, really dedicated themselves to communism, really dedicated themselves to bringing communism to China. But the communism that they learned was Stalinism. The communism they learned was an adaptation of Leninism, all of which we went over in our communist lecture. So when they came to China, they brought with them a almost copy of the Soviet Union's version of communism, right? Because of just how unique communism can be per country. And if you notice in this picture here, there's Mao Zedong next to them. Mao wasn't one of the 28, but did support them and work together with them. Now, the biggest issue is Mao felt that true communism could not apply to China, as you're going to hear in the ideology lecture, and argued with the 28 Bolsheviks. They would say that if we want communism here, we're going to motivate the workers. And Mao would constantly say no. And they would fight. Although they were both communists, they would fight against each other to really see and vibe for power and leadership within the organization. And because they were Mao's biggest threat and Mao's biggest competition, he really tried to manipulate the situation and tried to make actions and moves that would undermine them, just as they would do actions to undermine Mao. But as we remember from Newton's third law, to put a little bit of physics in here, to also understand social movements and groups, we know Newton's third law is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And that was the case here. The more the 28 Bolsheviks tried to fight to gain power, they were spreading communism. The more Mao fought to gain power over the 28 Bolsheviks, he was spreading communism. And so the ultimate result was, as these two groups, the 28 Bolsheviks and Mao, were going out and exerting their force on the population, the reaction was that no matter where they went, they were growing and popularizing communism. So this power was going to grow and grow and grow. And if at the end of the day, the average citizen is like, well, Mao talks about communism and the 28 Bolsheviks talk about communism, what's going to matter more? What they're saying or their actions? And that is where this third law comes into place. They're both promoting communism for each other, but through the actions we're going to see and read, and you've read in the following lectures, you're going to see just how those reactions on the right action is going to help Mao secure his power. And a lot of that also comes down to who Mao is. So here's a young picture of Mao. This is a picture that was taken during the Chinese Civil War, Part 2, the one where it was immediately after... sorry, this one was taken immediately after World War I, so the Chinese Civil War, Part 1. Now, Mao came from the peasant class. He was a librarian. He had some education, but he was a peasant at the end of the day. His family didn't own land. He didn't have a lot of huge money or things like that. And because of that, Mao was seen as an equal. He was seen as somebody who understands the people. And that contradicts the 28 Bolsheviks, right? The 28 Bolsheviks left China to go to school. Mao couldn't do that. He couldn't have that money. So he was very easier to connect with. And we see this in 1912 and 1927, because when Mao first started growing up, not just in age, but in philosophy, in his own personal understandings of the way life works, between 1912, just before World War I, all the way to the end of World War I, and when the the nationalists turn on the CCP, Mao experiences World War I, the warlords taking over China, the collapse of the dynasty, almost World War II, and he experiences violence. Every chance that violence can occur to him, it does. He witnesses just how horrible things are being treated. He witnesses just the sheer acts of, if you want something done, you have to be aggressive, you have to commit violence. And because of that, when Mao comes to power, when he starts gaining more power in the Communist Party, he comes down to a very simple philosophy, and it's one that's quoted quite often with Mao, which was, all powers grow from the barrel of a gun. And Mao would use this and preach this in his communism. Because, as we remember, a part of communism is revolution. So this not only fit with his personal philosophy of communism, his creation of Maoism, as we're going to hear and learn, but it also is the only thing he's known and witnessed. So to him, that is the only thing that can be done. So when the nationalists turn on the CCP in the Chinese Civil War Part 1 and in the Chinese Civil War Part 2, Mao solely knows and solely focuses that we need to kill. We need to have violence. We need to destroy what we do not like within the country. And the competition between the 28 Bolsheviks and Mao grow and grow and grow until 1934, when Japan invades China. Because in 1934, the CCP is almost killed, as we will learn in subsequent lessons, in the Long March. And Mao's fervent leadership, Mao's aggressive tactics, and his call and leadership through the Long March solidified him as the primary leader. Because as you remember, Mao and the 28 Bolsheviks are competing with each other. But actions are going to speak louder than words, because Mao's a communist, the 28 Bolsheviks are communists, and everyone they try to persuade against each other, at the end of the day, are communists. So when we get to the Long March, as you're going to hear in subsequent videos, this action commits Mao to be the leader of the CCP, that he fully takes control. Because in the events following the Long March, he continues to show just how successful he is, just how intelligent he is, if you will, how opportunistic he can be in securing not only power, but safety, but security, but education and hospitals. It's a very interesting dynamic that we see at the end of the Long March.